This is channel Xianxia Audio. Please support me like a subscription. This is the series I'm Not a Theater God. Chapter 81. The Grave and the Audience. The Bai Qi token reacted? A hint of doubt flashed through Chen Ling's mind. He held the Bai Qi token in his hand and continued forward. The appearance of the Bai Qi token was already extremely peculiar, as if someone had transmitted it to him from the depths of the ancient treasury through the soldier god path. Now that Chen Ling had entered the depths of the ancient treasury, the Bai Qi token reacted again. Perhaps it was guiding him to something? As Chen Ling gradually delved deeper into the ancient treasury, the giant sword that pierced through heaven and earth slowly approached him. An inexplicable chill lingered around him, as if it could freeze him to the bone. This chill was not a physical cold, but an indescribable feeling, like the spine-chilling sensation of walking through mass grave late at night and feeling like someone was staring at him. Chen Ling suddenly thought that, in a sense, he was also walking within a great tomb. A great war tomb that had existed since the dawn of humanity. Chen Ling's gaze swept across his surroundings. Large gullies were scattered across the land. No, they could no longer be called gullies, but pits. These pits contained hundreds or thousands of figures, motionless like sculptures, similar to the terracotta army that Chen Ling had visited. In the trial area, the largest gully Chen Ling had seen could only accommodate 50 people. But here, a casual glance revealed hundreds of people at a minimum. And as he delved deeper, pits containing thousands of people were everywhere. It's getting colder and colder. Chen Ling frowned deeply. Just as the surrounding cold made him unbearable, the Bai Qi token in his hand became increasingly hot, like a miniature sun clutched in his palm. The heat waves drove all the cold air half a meter away. But Chen Ling, holding the token, did not feel burned. Instead, he inexplicably felt a sense of security. Where exactly did it want to guide him? Chen Ling's pace involuntarily quickened. As he gradually approached the black giant sword, he seemed to vaguely see something flash around him. A feeling of being watched welled up in his heart. But whenever Chen Ling turned to look, he could not see their shadows, as if it was just his imagination. There was something in the depths of the ancient treasury. Chen Ling's brows furrowed tighter and tighter, just as he couldn't help but want to turn back. An incredibly massive pit appeared before his eyes. It was a circular pit with a diameter of several kilometers, stretching endlessly under the dim sky. Chen Ling stood at the edge of this pit, as tiny as an ant. Shock appeared in Chen Ling's eyes. How many people could such a large pit accommodate? Tens of thousands? Over 100,000? Hundreds of thousands? This was the largest pit Chen Ling had seen since entering the Bingdao ancient treasury. All the pits that refreshed soldiers before combined were not as large as this one. But strangely, this giant pit was empty. There were no regularly refreshed murderous projections. No murderous projections. In the center of the empty giant pit, only a desolate grave stood alone. A biting chill emanated from within the pit. Even with the token in hand, Chen Ling couldn't help but shiver. His naked eyes couldn't see anything in the giant pit, but he seemed to hear countless vengeful spirits, filled with murderous intent, wailing above the giant pit. Chen Ling suddenly remembered that he had read in history books that Qin General Bai Qi had buried alive 400,000 Zhao soldiers after the Battle of Changping. It was precisely because of this that Bai Qi's reputation as the god of slaughter was passed down through the ages. Chen Ling's gaze fell on the desolate grave, the only one in the center of the giant pit. His eyes slightly narrowed. This giant pit did not refresh murderous projections like the other pits. Instead, there was a desolate grave. Did this mean that this desolate grave alone was enough to contend with hundreds of thousands of murderous projections? Could that be? Chen Ling glanced at the hot token in his hand, hesitated for a moment, and then entered the giant pit, walking straight towards the desolate grave. As Chen Ling approached, he slowly made out the full appearance of the desolate grave. Rather than a tomb, it was more like a half-person high mound. There was nothing in front of the mound, just like the mass grave Chen Ling had buried before. How could the esteemed god of slaughter, Bai Qi, be buried in such a place? Chen Ling's mind was filled with doubt. He stopped in front of the desolate grave, and the heat from the token in his hand slowly receded, as if guiding Chen Ling here was its sole purpose. At the same time, a chilling cold emerged around him. On the ground in front of the desolate grave, a line of blood-red characters slowly surfaced, as if seeping from the bottom of the soil. 3 bows and 9 kowtows. And I shall impart divine abilities to you. The moment he saw this line of text, Chen Ling couldn't help but frown. Before he could react, an even colder aura erupted from the void behind him. Countless scarlet eyes suddenly opened, their gazes piercing through the theater's boundary. As if invisible, world-destroying fierce beasts roared and bellowed. A violent wind surged from within Chen Ling, slamming into the desolate grave opposite him. Almost simultaneously, a black murderous aura, so condensed it was almost corporeal, surged out from the earthen grave, as if the master of this desolate grave stood before endless ages, casting a similarly murderous gaze towards this place. Boom! Two terrifying auras collided in the giant pit, like circular waves erupting outwards. The aftermath peeled back the surrounding sand and soil, revealing the chilling blood and accumulated white bones beneath. On the ground in front of the desolate grave, a large character formed by seeping blood appeared, incomparably ferocious. Calamity. Chen Ling stood at the edge of the colliding auras, his red opera robe flapping wildly. He shielded his eyes with his hand as black murderous aura swirled around him, the terrifying pressure almost suffocating him. The audience and Bai Qi are fighting? This thought flashed through Chen Ling's mind, and he suddenly felt a surge of joy. If Bai Qi could contend with the audience, then was it possible for him to completely destroy the audience? If the audience died here, then he would also be completely free. Once this thought arose, it was difficult to shake off. Unfortunately, things did not go as smoothly as Chen Ling had imagined. Through his fingers, Chen Ling could see the desolate grave trembling, seemingly about to shatter very soon. The scarlet eyes behind Chen Ling gradually faded into the void, and the world-destroying level of pressure receded with them. At the same time, the murderous aura surging from the grave also flowed back to the bottom of the pit. The vast giant pit once again fell into a deathly silence. The exchange between the two sides came as suddenly as it left. If not for the surrounding ground being scraped away, revealing the crimson blood beneath, Chen Ling would have probably thought everything just now was an illusion. Chen Ling's gaze fell back on the desolate grave. Indeed, many cracks had appeared on the surface of the earthen mound. It seemed that Bai Qi had not gained the upper hand in the recent exchange. Just as Chen Ling felt regret, another line of blood-red characters seeped from the ground. Help me revive, and I shall fulfill your wish. Chapter 82. There's another survivor. The moment Chen Ling saw that line of text, he froze. Before he could react, a beam of blood-red light suddenly burst from the ground, soaring into the Bai Qi token in his palm. The surface of the Bai Qi token was stained with layers of crimson, then rapidly faded. Chen Ling distinctly felt a sharp, murderous intent emanating from it. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +7 close black lens bracket. Chen Ling didn't know what had happened, nor why the audience expectation increased with the integration of that blood-red light. He didn't have time to think much, because as soon as the blood-red light disappeared into the token, the entire giant pit began to shake violently. The distant edges of the pit rapidly vanished, the earth transforming into countless tiny grains of sand, like a collapsing sandbox world, annihilating into the void at the bottom of the ancient treasury at an astonishing speed. A wave of annihilation was sweeping towards Chen Ling. Chen Ling's pupils constricted slightly. He turned and fled without hesitation, his body rushing like a sword in the direction he came from. Amidst the collapse of this giant pit, large enough to hold hundreds of thousands of people, he was like a tiny, struggling ant, chasing a glimmer of hope. Chen Ling's speed had reached its limit. Just as the collapse was about to engulf him, he narrowly escaped the giant pit's range, stumbling onto the flat ground. Damn it, what happened? Chen Ling wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and looked back, only to see that the original giant pit had completely vanished, replaced by an empty void. When he looked down, it was like peering into an abyss. The next moment, the earth began to restore itself. The empty space was filled with soil emerging from who knew where, completely leveling within a few short seconds, as if the giant pit had never existed. Seeing this scene, Chen Ling's mind involuntarily recalled the automatic restoration after the murderous aura projection was killed. So, that giant pit was also restored by some mechanism of the Bingdao ancient treasury? Chen Ling glanced at the token in his hand, his confusion growing, but he had no time to linger. If nothing went wrong, the 3 enforcement officers were about to open the ancient treasury's gate. He hid the token close to his body and quickly rushed back to the trial area. First, he ran to the ancient treasury's entrance, disfigured the faces of all the 1st District Enforcer corpses, then threw them all into the cliff. After a moment's hesitation, he randomly threw 2 Aurora City Enforcer corpses down as well. After doing all this, Chen Ling randomly found the place with the most and messiest corpses and sat down. Thump. At the same time, a low hum came from the ancient treasury's entrance. The Bingdao ancient treasury had been opened. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed slightly. He casually picked up a short knife beside him, slowly pressed the blade against his abdomen, and slashed. His waist and abdomen were cut open by the knife, and a large amount of blood gushed out. Chen Ling's face visibly paled. He endured the intense pain and lay supine among the disordered corpses. In the crimson pool of blood, that pale, bloodless face showed a strange smile. The performance is over. He closed his eyes. Outside the Bingdao ancient treasury, the massive ship swayed gently with the waves. Beneath the black sky, 3 figures in trench coats stood at the bow, watching the slowly opening vortex. Time's up, a 4-striped enforcer said with his hands behind his back. I wonder how many will make it onto the soldier god path this year. Based on previous years, 7 or 8 would be good. This time it will probably be even fewer. Don't forget, Yan Shikai went in with that kid from the book God Path. He wants to steal other people's murderous aura, so others' chances of promotion will naturally be smaller. Yan Shikai is cheating so blatantly. Is the higher-up really not going to do anything? Mind your own business, the 5-striped enforcer said coldly. We just need to obey orders. The 2 4-striped enforcers immediately fell silent. As the vortex grew larger, half a minute later, it had returned to the size it was when everyone entered. They stood at the bow, waiting for the enforcers who had completed the trial to return from it. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the vortex remained silent, with no sign of anyone emerging from it. What's going on? Did they get the time wrong? The 4-striped enforcer was very puzzled. That shouldn't be. Could something have happened inside? What could happen in such an outer trial? Losing 1 or 2 people would be the most. Another enforcement officer shrugged. They probably still have someone who's unwilling to give up and wants to try again. Let's wait. The 3 waited for another 10 minutes. But the vortex still showed no reaction. Something's not right. The 5-striped enforcer frowned slightly. He pondered for a moment. Let's go in and see. But our rank exceeds tier 4. Won't we be rejected by this place? The situation is urgent. As escorts, we have a secret treasure given by Aurora City as a token, allowing us to operate inside for a short period. He stood at the bow, solemnly bowing to the black giant sword that pierced the heavens, then leapt, disappearing directly into the vortex. The other 2 enforcement officers exchanged glances and followed closely. A sensation of dizziness came over them, and the next moment, the 3 stood steadily on the edge of the cliff. A pungent smell of blood immediately rushed into their nostrils. The 3 enforcement officers frowned simultaneously. When they saw the situation at the cliff's edge, their expressions suddenly changed drastically. More than a dozen enforcer corpses were scattered everywhere on the cliff, most of them seemingly killed by bullets. These were precisely the group who had entered the ancient treasury earlier. What happened? The 4-striped enforcer exclaimed in shock. How? How did so many people die? The 5-striped enforcer's face was ashen. He quickly walked around among the corpses, his gaze locking onto one figure. He slowly knelt down. Something's not right. He grabbed the corpse's face and examined it carefully for a while. There was no such person among the enforcers who entered the ancient treasury this time. Are you saying someone infiltrated the enforcer team? Who? The 5-striped enforcer did not answer. He immediately stood up and quickly walked towards the depths of the ancient treasury. The deeper they went, the more corpses there were. The vast ancient treasury was silent, and this silence was deafening in the ears of the 3 enforcement officers. Is that Yan Shikai? A 4-striped enforcer trembled as he raised his hand, pointing to a corner. The other 2 turned sharply, seeing a thin figure twisted like a pretzel in a pool of blood. They stared for a long time before coming to their senses. It wasn't that they didn't recognize Yan Shikai, it was that Yan Shikai, drained of blood and flesh, was too different from before. If they didn't carefully distinguish the details on his face, the 3 would have a hard time connecting this dried corpse, whose eyes were still open in death, with the arrogant young Master Yan from the ship. It really is him. Another four-striped enforcer said hoarsely, terror appearing in his eyes. Even Yan Shikai died in the ancient treasury. Aurora City is going to be in big trouble. Quick, see if there are any survivors. The three searched separately. One of them came to the foot of the hill where the most brutal fighting had occurred. Dozens of enforcer and fire usurpers' corpses were piled together here, as if they had endured a life-and-death battle in a meat grinder. The more they searched, the colder their hearts grew. In the past 100 years, there had never been such a large-scale casualty among new recruits. They couldn't understand what had happened in here within a mere 24 hours. Among the corpses strewn across the ground, a figure that had no vital signs subtly moved a finger. The four-striped enforcer's pupils constricted, and he immediately shouted, "There's another survivor here." Chapter 83, Performance Ends. As soon as these words were spoken, the other two enforcement officers rushed over like arrows. There's still a survivor? Wait, how is it him? When the two saw Chen Ling, who still had a trace of breath remaining, their eyes widened in surprise. He must have had his lower abdomen cut open during the fight. And he's lost too much blood. That enforcement officer hesitated, looking at the five-striped enforcer. If we don't do something, he's really going to die. Should we save him? Everyone who entered the ancient treasury had died. But Chen Ling, whom they had originally thought would surely die, somehow managed to survive. At this moment, they sighed at the unpredictability of fate and were somewhat indecisive. Should we save him? The five-striped enforcer cursed furiously. Are you out of your minds? He's the only remaining seedling of the entire enforcer team. If he dies, who will explain to Aurora City what happened here? Save him, at all costs. Get him saved. The two enforcement officers immediately began to rescue Chen Ling, but they didn't have any rescue equipment on hand, so they could only give him a simple bandage and then quickly take him away from the Bingdao Ancient Treasury. As everyone left, the Bingdao Ancient Treasury once again fell into a deathly silence. Above the corpse-strewn wilderness, wisps of killing intent extended from the deepest part of the black giant sword, coiling like swimming snakes around one of the corpses, frantically pouring into it. After a brief few seconds, Jian Chongsheng's dark red eyes suddenly opened. In the center of the dim stage, Chen Ling, wearing a red opera robe, slowly opened his eyes. Who? He subconsciously touched his lower abdomen, as if relieved, and let out a sigh. To deceive the three enforcement officers, Chen Ling could only choose seppuku, the slowest and most agonizing method of suicide. If he had shot himself in the head, his revival speed would have been very fast, and the enforcement officers might not have found him before his wound healed. Only death by blood loss could maximize the extension of the death process. And even if he revived later, it wouldn't be too shocking. But the downside was, this way of dying was too painful. Shooting myself in the head is still quicker. Chen Ling slowly got up from the stage. His gaze fell on the audience seats. Although the audience's unexpected encounter with the desolate tombs was a bit surprising, it seemed there was no change currently. Those countless pairs of crimson eyes were still staring at him in unison. Chen Ling had already grown accustomed to this eerie gaze. He walked directly to the screen and looked down. After he bled himself to death, the audience's expectation value, as expected, decreased by 50%, from 72% to 22%, teetering on the verge of losing control. The good news was that at this moment, in the lower right corner of the screen, a treasure chest icon was flashing again. Chen Ling reached out and tapped the treasure chest. Dong dong dong. Accompanied by exciting music, a table appeared out of thin air in the center of the stage. On the white paper in the middle of the tabletop, a few lines of small text quickly appeared. Congratulations on completing the play. And then there were none. Highest audience expectation value for this play, 72%. You have gained one designated drawing right. After use, you can choose a specific character from all the characters who appeared in this play and randomly draw one of their abilities. The probability of drawing a rare skill is related to the overall audience expectation value of this play. As expected, completing the performance task on the stone steps means completing a play. Chen Ling thought to himself. In the void in front of him, pages appeared out of thin air. Open black lens bracket, you're awake? As Chen Ling opened his eyes, Chu Muyun's voice leisurely came from the side, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. When they colluded with enforcement officers, forcing one ordinary person after another to their deaths. Where were you? Where was your right to investigate? Where was your right to enforce the law? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up, as if completing some ritual. He murmured to himself, "The performance begins." Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Close black lens bracket. Words continuously appeared on the script, detailing all of Chen Ling's experiences during this period. Seeing his life being turned into a script again, Chen Ling's heart no longer had much fluctuation. Or rather, he was already numb. When he finished reading the last sentence of the play, he slowly closed it. At the same time, his vision suddenly blurred. He seemed to return to that dream. The spotlight above his head rapidly dimming. Endless night enveloping the world. A distant star hanging overhead. And only a blood-red path emitting a strange aura, winding its way to the sky. And at this moment, Chen Ling stood on the first step of this path. Open black lens bracket. Complete a performance with at least 50 participants. And ensure no one is left alive after the performance ends. Close black lens bracket. As the script in Chen Ling's hand flashed with light, the second step in front of him trembled slightly, the small text on its surface vanishing without a trace. Immediately after, a pure mental force surged from his mind. To be honest, Chen Ling didn't really know what mental force was, and he had hardly ever perceived it. But at this moment, it was as if a spring had appeared at his feet, pouring frantically into his body from this twisted divine path. His whole body felt as if it had been cleansed, and his originally exhausted spirit quickly recovered. Only by completing the performance task above am I qualified to move to the next stage. Huh. Chen Ling looked at the restored step, deep in thought. He tentatively lifted his foot and walked towards the second step. His foot easily passed through the original invisible barrier, but as he stepped, the mental force in his mind was frantically consumed, and by the time all the mental force was exhausted, his toes had only just barely touched the step. It had only been a few days since he stepped onto the first stage, so it was still too early to try to step onto the second stage in one go. Fortunately, the barrier to the second stage had now been removed, and stepping onto the second stage was only a matter of time. Chen Ling withdrew the foot he had extended. The next moment, his surroundings rapidly shattered, and he returned to the center of the stage. Chen Ling held the script and looked around. Countless playing cards flew in midair, then neatly landed on the table. All the small text on the original papers disappeared. In its place was a short sentence. Please write the name of the character you wish to draw on the paper. Chen Ling picked up the pen and, with hardly any hesitation, wrote a name on the paper. Xianxia. Chen Ling certainly had other options, such as the fire usurpers. Although their face-stealing skill was incredibly useless to Chen Ling, item stealing and light stealing, used by 8 were quite good. And there was also the book God Path's seal character. The key problem was that if he learned these skills, he wouldn't have any chance to use them. Chen Ling wanted to disguise himself as an enforcement officer on the surface, so he needed a presentable and plausible first-tier skill of the soldier god path. Currently, there were only 2 types of first-tier skills that had appeared, Xianxia's and others. Chen Ling had personally witnessed the terror of the open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path. A first-tier skill could transform Xianxia, a loser in life, into a super genius, even allowing him to fight Chen Ling to a standstill. Overall, Xianxia's first-tier open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket was his best choice. As Chen Ling wrote Xianxia's name, all the other playing cards on the table disappeared. Only a lonely blue card remained, placed in front of him. Chapter 84. Blood Clothes. Chen Ling reached out to grab the card. Skill: Blood Clothes. Affiliation: Soldier God Path. Open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket path. First stage. Character: Xianxiang. Chen Ling absorbed the card, closed his eyes for a moment where he stood, then murmured to himself. Blood Clothes. Huh, no wonder. The Blood Clothes skill, unlike the open black lens bracket iron armor close black lens bracket of other paths, does not possess extraordinary defense or strength, Its only characteristic is that the more injured its user is, the higher their combat power, especially in terms of strength and speed. At the same time, the vitality of the blood clothes owner will be greatly enhanced, unless it's an absolutely fatal injury like a headshot. Other injuries make it very difficult to completely kill them. This also explained why Xianxia was like an unkillable cockroach, growing stronger the more he fought. This skill also compensated for Chen Ling's current weakness, which was his overly mediocre physical fitness, even with killing Rhapsody. It was difficult for him to exert his full power. Next time before a fight, I'll stab myself 3 times, Chen Ling thought to himself. After Chen Ling drew the skill, the half-time break completely ended, and he only felt a dizzying sensation as his consciousness returned to his body. How is he? Can he still live? I don't know, we've been trying to save him for so long, and there's still no response. The 4-striped enforcement officer shook his head and spoke bitterly. There's probably no hope. Upon hearing this, the 5-striped enforcer's face was so grim it looked like it could drip water. He gritted his teeth and growled in a low voice. Keep saving him, bring out the last of the hormones. If he doesn't make it, we're all dead. The 2 enforcement officers exchanged glances and immediately went to prepare the hormone injection. Just then, a faint, mosquito-like voice came. Hoarse. I. The 3 enforcement officers were stunned simultaneously. Then their faces showed immense joy. He's alive. He's still alive. Chen Ling, can you hear me? How do you feel? Under the expectant gazes of the 3 enforcement officers, Chen Ling struggled to open his eyes. His unfocused pupils slowly coming into focus, he opened his mouth. Where is this? This is on the ship. We've already brought you out of the ancient treasury. The 5-striped enforcer asked anxiously. Chen Ling, what exactly happened in the Bingdao ancient treasury? Upon hearing the words, Bingdao ancient treasury, Chen Ling's pupils visibly contracted. He seemed to recall something terrifying. And after a long while, he painstakingly uttered 3 words. Fire, usurpers. The hearts of the 3 enforcement officers sank. As expected, the 5-striped enforcer clenched his fists, his eyes glinting. Only they could steal faces and infiltrate the enforcer team. But when exactly did they make their move? It was the train. What? The fire usurpers attacked the 1st District Enforcer's train, then everyone disguised themselves as them, and infiltrated the ancient treasury. Chen Ling couldn't help but clench his fists, speaking hoarsely. After they entered the ancient treasury, they started a massacre. Our enforcers from 3rd District, 5 districts, and District 6, and a few enforcers from Aurora City were shot and killed by them, all falling into the abyss below. I happened to be threatened by Xianxia at the time and was separated from them, which allowed me to escape. They actually attacked the train? That's not right. The Railway Bureau didn't report any attacks. I'll check again once we get ashore. How many people came from the 1st District? It seems like 9. The 5-striped enforcer frowned slightly. The images of the fire usurpers' corpses he had seen flashing through his mind. Seemingly calculating the number, Chen Ling continued. Then, Pu Wen used some kind of paper to freeze them all. Lu Xuanming killed one with a single slash. And Yan Shikai also used his ring to push the other 2 off the cliff. Pu Wen shouted something. And we all fled in different directions. That matches up. The 5-striped enforcer nodded slightly. I was very scared and ran to a deserted place alone. But I saw several soldier god paths descending to other areas. Later, Yan Shikai said he was going to encircle and annihilate the fire usurpers, and then they started fighting. Yan Shikai said that? The 5-striped enforcer asked in surprise. Yes, he said that group of fire usurpers stole his ring. He had a very strong killing intent on him at the time. As if he was very angry. And then? Then they started fighting. I originally wanted to hide until the end. But a fire usurper who was being chased happened to run towards me. And I fought him desperately and killed him. And then, I saw a soldier god path smash into my face. And I lost consciousness. Chen Ling finished his narration, his eyes filled with sincerity and pain. The 3 enforcement officers exchanged glances, seeing the solemnity in each other's eyes. At this point, the cause and effect of the incident were basically clear, but more specific details might still require Aurora City to send people in to verify. So, you also stepped onto the soldier god path? It seems so, Chen Ling answered uncertainly. Which path? Open black lens bracket Asura close black lens bracket. Upon hearing these two words, shock appeared in the eyes of all three enforcement officers. They looked at Chen Ling in astonishment, seemingly not expecting his talent to be so terrifying. Alright, you should rest well first. The five-striped enforcer took a deep breath. After we get ashore, we will conduct a more detailed investigation. This incident is extremely serious. You must be prepared to answer questions from Aurora City at any time. Chen Ling hummed in response and closed his eyes tiredly. The three enforcement officers pushed the door open and exited. As the ship gradually moved away from the Bingdao ancient treasury's realm, the soldier god path fragment hidden in Chen Ling's embrace suddenly trembled. The three enforcement officers stood on the deck, looking back at the dark night sky above the Bingdao ancient treasury. What do you all think? This incident is too egregious. After we get ashore, we must immediately notify Aurora City. By the way, aren't the fire usurpers always active in the southern realm? Why did they suddenly come to the Aurora domain? I don't know. Before their words finished, the gigantic black sword piercing through heaven and earth let out a low rumble, and a chilling killing intent instantly locked onto the ship that was about to leave the realm. The killing intent of the soldier god path? The three enforcement officers' expressions changed drastically. What's going on? What disturbed those existences deep within the ancient treasury? Almost simultaneously, Chen Ling inside the room also opened his eyes. He could feel a warm current flash across the surface of the Bai Qi token. After this warm current passed, the killing intent released from the Bingdao ancient treasury quickly receded, as if everything just now was merely an illusion of the onlookers. Did I see things? The four-striped enforcement officer looked at the calm surface of the frozen sea, his eyes full of bewilderment. The Bingdao ancient treasury did indeed react. The five-striped enforcer immediately said, But why? Something's not right. What's not right? That Chen Ling who came out of the ancient treasury is not right. Chapter 85. Bai Yi. The five-striped enforcer's expression hardened, and he abruptly turned to look at the ship's cabin. Just as the three of them were about to make a move, an imperceptible white light flashed overhead. The three instantly froze in place. They stood there like statues for a long time, then suddenly spoke again. Was I seeing things? The soldier's path ancient treasury did react. But why? The five-striped enforcer thought seriously for a while, as if an idea was about to leap into his mind, but he couldn't recall it. It must be something on this ship that attracted the killing intent of the soldier's path ancient treasury. What could it be? From the ancient treasury, it seems only. Before he finished speaking, another white light flashed overhead. The pupils of the three men scattered again, staring blankly into nothingness, as if they had lost something. This time, the three paused for a full 10 seconds before regaining their senses. What do you think? This incident is too serious. After we dock, we must immediately notify Aurora City. By the way, haven't the law enforcers always been active in the southern realm? Why did they suddenly come to the Aurora domain? Quote. On the deck, the three men eerily repeated their initial conversation. They seemed to have completely forgotten the scene of the soldier's path ancient treasury's anomaly just now, as well as their suspicion of Chen Ling. It was as if an invisible hand had quietly stolen that half-minute of memory from their minds. Steam billowed from the ship as it completely sailed out of the black sky of the soldier's path ancient treasury. The dim yellow sunset once again pierced through the clouds, scattering onto the surface of the frozen sea. On a massive, pristine white iceberg, a hand slowly lifted the brim of a white baseball cap, revealing half a face. A silver, snake-shaped earring glinted like gold in the twilight. The oppressive ship, like a mountain, bore down on the iceberg. A faint smile played on his lips. The next moment, his figure vanished from where he stood. Ellipsis. The Bai Qi token reacted? Inside the cabin, Chen Ling frowned, looking at the token in his palm, his eyes filled with confusion. He didn't know that the ship had just passed the edge of the soldier's path ancient treasury. He only knew that at that instant, the Dao Foundation fragment and the Bai Qi token reacted one after another, then returned to normal within a second, as if nothing had happened. Just as Chen Ling was deep in thought, a white shadow suddenly flashed in his peripheral vision. Chen Ling was startled and quickly put away the token. Looking in that direction, unbeknownst to him, a tall, white-clad figure was quietly leaning against the inner wall of the cabin. Like a ghost. Who? When did he come in? Two questions instantly flooded Chen Ling's mind. This cabin had only one entrance, and the surrounding walls were thick steel, with no other way for anyone to enter. And Chen Ling was certain that before this, he was the only one in the cabin. Chen Ling's brain raced, and in a flash, he reacted. He raised his right hand, lightly touched his brow, and recited devoutly and sincerely. Usurping the heavenly Tao, seizing the universe. Law Enforcers number 13, respectfully welcomes the thief saint. Cold sweat profusely seeped from Chen Ling's back. The man in front of him wasn't wearing the black overcoat of an enforcement officer, indicating he wasn't from Aurora City. His infiltration didn't cause any disturbance, which meant either the 3 enforcement officers outside had already been killed by him, or his strength was sufficient to brazenly infiltrate the cabin without the enforcement officers noticing. In either case, it meant that this man's strength was far superior to that of the 3 enforcement officers. Extremely strong, not an enforcement officer, and suddenly appearing right after leaving the soldier's path ancient treasury. He was either the law enforcer's thief Saint Bai Yi, or a Twilight Society member sent to rendezvous with him. Considering the worst-case scenario, Chen Ling speaking the law enforcer's creed was absolutely correct. The figure slowly raised his head. Beneath the white baseball cap, a pair of sharp eyes locked onto Chen Ling, as cold as ice. Number 13. His voice was devoid of any emotion. Where are the others? They were all exposed. They clashed with the enforcers in the ancient treasury and all died in battle. A hint of regret appeared in Chen Ling's eyes. 8 perished with 3 enforcers who had stepped onto the divine path. I barely managed to save my own life. The Tao Foundation fragment? Didn't get it. Didn't get it? He raised an eyebrow. Then, what is this? He pulled his hand out of his pocket, and at some point, a dark red crystal fragment had appeared in his palm. It was the very one Chen Ling had originally hidden on himself. Chen Ling's heart immediately sank. Damn it, how are these thieves so fast? Tao Foundation fragment? Chen Ling feigned surprise and replied. Thief Saint Senior, where did you get that? From where? Of course, from you. Just as the man was halfway through his sentence, Chen Ling shot out of bed like an arrow, rushing towards the cabin door with astonishing speed. The moment his hand was about to touch the doorway, his vision suddenly blurred. When he regained his senses, he had been moved to stand before the mysterious figure. He had stolen Chen Ling's position. Chen Ling reacted incredibly quickly. Realizing he couldn't escape, he simply followed through with a palm strike aimed at the other party's neck. At the same time, the other party chuckled softly. Your injuries haven't healed yet, so don't move around. Red Heart 6. Upon hearing the last 3 words, Chen Ling's hand abruptly halted just before the other party's neck. A flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes. The man gently raised his hand, and a playing card appeared out of thin air, held between his 2 fingers. Red Heart Q. Human civilization, never extinguished. He slowly spoke. I'm here to meet you, newcomer. Chen Ling stared at the red card face with the queen's image, stunned for a long time before he finally came to his senses. You're a member of the Twilight Society? Chen Ling asked blankly. Then, what about thief Saint Bai Yi? The man looked at Chen Ling and smiled without speaking. You are the law enforcer's thief Saint Bai Yi, and also the Twilight Society's Red Heart Q? Chen Ling finally reacted. You're also an undercover agent? I'm not an undercover agent. Thief Saint is my original identity, it's just that I chose to betray. Bai Yi casually put away the playing card, seemingly not intending to explain further on that matter. Speaking of which, as a newcomer who just joined the society, you completed this mission very well. Wait a minute? Chen Ling's mind was struggling to process. You are the law enforcer's thief saint, and then you sent people to infiltrate the ancient treasury to steal the Tao Foundation fragment. So why did you also contact me and have me steal the fragment? Good question. Bai Yi had already guessed Chen Ling would ask, and spread his hands to explain. But you overlooked one problem. I am the thief saint. Yes, but I am not the law enforcer's leader. Sending them to steal the Tao Foundation fragment was the leader's decision. I was just responsible for the rendezvous. Then why didn't you wait for them to steal the fragment and then steal it yourself? As soon as Chen Ling asked this question, he realized the answer himself, and spoke thoughtfully. I understand, your position within the law enforcers is too high. If you were to steal the fragment at this time, you would inevitably be exposed? Smart. Bai Yi smiled. That's why I needed you, to help me put on a good show. Chapter 86. Is my face real? Bai Yi could, of course, snatch the fragments stolen by the fire usurpers. But if he did, his identity as a thief saint would be ruined, and the fire usurpers would undoubtedly pursue him with all their might. For him, doing so would definitely be more trouble than it was worth. But if the fragments were snatched by someone else within the ancient treasury, then it would be different. Understanding all this, Chen Ling finally breathed a sigh of relief. He returned to the bed and sat down, the last great stone in his heart finally settling. He could control the performance within the Bingdao ancient treasury. But once he left the ancient treasury, the development of events would be beyond his control. Neither the three enforcement officers nor the thief Saint Bai Yi were beings he could contend with. His only hope rested on that mysterious contact. But he hadn't expected that the contact and the thief Saint Bai Yi were the same person. You acted quite realistically just now. Bai Yi couldn't help but exclaim. I almost thought you had really been replaced by number 13. Chen Ling gave a dry laugh and said nothing. Bai Yi put away the Dao Foundation fragment and continued. I've already stolen the memories of those three enforcement officers regarding the anomaly in the Bingdao ancient treasury. They won't suspect you anymore. Can you get yourself out of this next? Yes, Chen Ling nodded. Then, as if remembering something, he asked, oh, right, can you help me with one more thing? Speak. Help me hide these two things on the beam at number 128 Han Shuang Street in the Law Enforcers. Chen Ling handed the Bai Qi token and the red ring to Bai Yi, who took them and examined them carefully, opening his mouth in surprise. This thing has the aura of the Law Enforcer's good stuff. Did you bring it out from the ancient treasury? Yes. All right, anything else? Chen Ling shook his head. Bai Yi was about to leave when he suddenly stopped, taking out a piece of paper from his pregnant with a strange expression. There's one more thing I want to ask you. What did you mean by this message you sent me? Chen Ling took the note doubtfully and froze when he saw the two bloody words on it. Go to hell. Chen Ling clearly remembered that he hadn't written that in the general store booth. Was it the audience's doing again? This, was an accident. Chen Ling explained vaguely. Bai Yi gave him a strange look, then averted his gaze and waved his hand casually. I'm leaving. See you in Aurora City. The next moment, his figure vanished into thin air. See you in Aurora City? A hint of doubt flashed in Chen Ling's heart. Why were all these members of the Twilight Society heading to Aurora City? Chu Muyan was like this. And Bai Yi was also like this. Without the Dao Foundation fragment and the Bai Qi token, Chen Ling felt light. He lay directly on the bed, closing his eyes to rest. A few hours later, the ship slowly docked at Winter Port. An enforcement officer helped the weak Chen Ling back onto land. As soon as Chen Ling disembarked, he saw dozens of enforcers in black and red uniforms, who had already sealed off the entire Winter Port. The once bustling port was now filled only with solemnity and cold. Seeing this formation, Chen Ling knew that Aurora City had already received the news. The 70-odd enforcers, on whom Aurora City had placed great hopes, entered the Bingdao ancient treasury for trial. But only one survived. This was undoubtedly an earthquake-level disaster for Aurora City. You are Chen Ling? A six-stripe enforcement officer stepped forward, frowning as he looked at Chen Ling. Yes. The six-stripe enforcement officer gave the surrounding enforcers a look. Frisk him. 3 enforcers rushed to Chen Ling without a word, searching him from head to toe, almost making him strip on the spot. Under this level of search, Chen Ling couldn't hide anything. Of course, they were destined to find nothing. There's nothing else, an enforcer replied softly. Sorry, Chen Ling, the six-stripe enforcement officer said again, leaving no room for doubt. Next, we need to verify your face to prevent a fire usurper from impersonating you. As soon as these words were spoken, Chen Ling's eyes narrowed instantly. To be honest, he had long guessed this face verification step, since Aurora City knew that fire usurpers had infiltrated the Bingdao ancient treasury. They naturally had to be on guard, especially since he was the only survivor to emerge from it. From the moment he stepped out of the ancient treasury, Chen Ling was destined to undergo the most rigorous investigation in the entire Aurora domain. An enforcer pulled out a short knife from his pregnant and slowly walked in front of Chen Ling. Before he could make a move, Chen Ling broke free from the enforcers on either side and pulled out his own dagger from his pregnant. This scene directly startled the many enforcers around him. They instantly became vigilant, and the 6 stripe enforcement officer's gaze also sharpened. "I'll do it myself." Chen Ling expressionlessly plunged the sharp blade of the dagger into his cheek. Then slowly cut it open. Scarlet blood dripped down the blade, revealing the flesh beneath the skin. The whining cold wind blew through the silent port. Under everyone's tense gaze, the young man who was personally cutting open his own face smiled. His lacerated cheek was bloody and eerie. His lips curled slightly as he asked softly, "Do you think my face is real?" Enforcer headquarters. Mong Jie. A figure pushed open the door and rushed into the office. "What's wrong?" Law enforcers who was sitting behind the desk frowned slightly. "Why are you so flustered?" "It's Aurora City. News from Aurora City." Aurora City? Law enforcers seemed to recall something. Did Zhang Qin and Chen Ling come out of the ancient treasury? They died. What? Law enforcers was stunned. They all died, the enforcer repeated. The fire usurpers ambushed the Bingdao ancient treasury, and all the enforcers who entered the ancient treasury were killed. Except for. Law enforcer's face instantly turned pale. He abruptly stood up from his seat, and a terrifying pressure instantly filled the room. Except for what? Except for Chen Ling, he said. Aurora City said that Chen Ling is the only survivor. Law enforcers stood frozen. They found Chen Ling among a pile of corpses. When they found him, he had reportedly lost too much blood and was on the verge of death. And now, was he rescued? He was rescued, but he's reportedly been detained at Winter Port to undergo investigation and interrogation by Aurora City. Among the enforcers who entered the ancient treasury this time, one was the young master of the Constellation Commerce Association, and another was the son of a 7-stripe law enforcer. Their 2 families have already sent people to Winter Port. I don't know what they intend to. Hearing the last sentence, law enforcer's expression changed as if he had thought of something. Before the enforcer could say anything more, he pushed open the door and left, his black trench coat disappearing into the snowy distance at an astonishing speed. Chapter 87 Interrogation. As Chen Ling personally cut his face, the only sound left in Winter Port was the wind. For some reason, everyone felt a chill down their spines as they looked at Chen Ling's cut face and his faint smile. "That's enough," the 6-stripe enforcement officer finally spoke. "Take him inside to treat his wounds first. And at the same time, prepare him for questioning." The 2 enforcers breathed a sigh of relief. They helped Chen Ling up and walked straight to a small house not far away. This small house was clearly temporarily requisitioned, probably a private residence of some family. Cramped and dim. Chen Ling was helped inside and sat down by the bed. The 2 enforcers gave him gauze and medicine, then told him to wait there. Chen Ling heard them close the door and leave, but they didn't go far, they stayed outside the door. Chen Ling simply applied medicine to his face, wrapped it twice, and didn't bother with it anymore. After all, for him, who possessed open black lens bracket faceless close black lens bracket, his face was just a consumable, as long as he peeled off this skin. It would still be a flawless face. Over the next half hour, 4 or 5 groups of people came in succession. Some were enforcers, some were politicians from Aurora City, and others Chen Ling didn't even know the background of. But they should be important figures in Aurora City. They repeatedly asked about the events and details, especially the deaths of Yan Shikai and Lu Xuanming. Chen Ling directly attributed Yan Shikai's death to Jian Chongsheng. As for Lu Xuanming's death, he attributed it to 8. Strictly speaking, Chen Ling didn't actually lie. He just concealed some details and displaced the actions of some characters. Even if these people re-entered ancient treasury and meticulously searched the crime scene, they would hardly find any flaws. Unless they entered the abyss at the bottom of the cliff and found the corpses of the 1st district enforcers he had thrown down. But even if they were found, their faces had all been disfigured by Chen Ling, and with their bodies smashed into pulp. It would be almost impossible to confirm their identities. Soon, the enforcers received another message. They found an empty K-18 train in a warehouse near Winter Port, suspected of having merged with some kind of sacrificial artifact. This discovery further corroborated Chen Ling's testimony. The fire usurpers did indeed complete the face swapping by attacking the train. The K-18 train connects the 7 districts, and a train that didn't exist in the archives picking up 1st District enforcers at the starting station would hardly arouse suspicion. Moreover, the fire usurpers had cleaned the train too thoroughly, leaving no clues whatsoever. As for whether it was possible that other districts were swapped, everyone didn't even suspect it. Because Chen Ling had no need to lie about this matter, and the fact that he himself had ridden the train and had not been replaced was the best evidence. So, is the interrogation over? Chen Ling rubbed the corners of his eyes wearily. When can I go back? It should be soon. One of the enforcers guarding the door replied hesitantly. Should? After all, it's the first time such a serious trial accident has happened. And it involves too much. And the Constellation Commerce Association and that 7-striped law enforcer are not to be trifled with. They originally hoped their inheritors could go through trials and embark on the book God path. But they all died in there. Do you think they'll let it go? Hearing this, Chen Ling's brows furrowed even tighter. What does that have to do with me? The fire usurpers killed them. But the fire usurpers are all dead now. The enforcer said meaningfully. Everyone died, but only you survived. If they want revenge on the fire usurpers, they can only start with you, trying to find more clues. But I've told them everything I know. What if you're hiding something? These big families always have some means to make people spill everything they know. And even restore everything you've seen. Only then will they feel at ease. Of course, after doing that, most people either die or go mad. Chen Ling's heart sank instantly. If those people in Aurora City really used such methods on him, wouldn't everything be exposed? Isn't this considered extrajudicial punishment? Don't the enforcers care? It is. It's expressly forbidden in Aurora City. But among these enforcers and enforcement officers, who wants to go against them? If they want to take you, who dares to stop them? Chen Ling fell silent. At this moment, the enforcer seemed to realize he had spoken too much and quickly explained. Brother, I just said it casually. It's not certain yet. Chen Ling didn't respond. He suddenly remembered that the group of people who had repeatedly questioned him about the details of Yan Shikai's and Lu Xuanming's deaths had all looked somewhat grim after asking. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +5 close black lens bracket. A bad premonition surged in his heart. He closed the door and began to ponder in the room. If someone really wanted to take him away, how could he break free? Run? With so many enforcement officers surrounding the place, where could he run? Just then, a low conversation came from outside the door. And then, the door of the house was pushed open. Outside the door was a man dressed in black. He was not wearing the standard enforcement officer's windbreaker, but rather clothing made of an expensive and warm fabric. Behind him were 2 enforcers, one of whom was the one who had just spoken to Chen Ling. Looking at Chen Ling with sympathy. Enforcer Chen Ling, the man at the head slowly spoke. Come with me. Where to? Aurora City. Chen Ling's brows furrowed. Who are you? Why'd I have to go to Aurora City? Who I am is not important. What's important is, you must come with me today. The man's gaze sharpened, and a terrifying pressure was released from his body, engulfing Chen Ling like a tsunami. A phantom of a book God path appeared. A book God path that Chen Ling had seen not long ago. Compared to the opponent, Chen Ling's current mental strength was worlds apart. Undoubtedly, the opponent's rank was definitely above the 4th rank, but not yet at the 5th rank, as there was still a gap compared to the aura of the 5-striped enforcer. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would be the one sent by the Constellation Commerce Association or the 7-striped law enforcer. Because kidnapping Chen Ling overtly violated Aurora City's regulations, they couldn't directly send enforcement officers. They could only use powerful individuals outside the system. And this book God path owner before him was clearly their person. What if I refuse? Chen Ling spoke word by word. Chapter 88. None of your business? Refuse? The man chuckled. I'd like to see how you refuse. As his voice fell, he casually pulled a paper talisman from his arms and waved it at Chen Ling. The 4 large characters on the paper immediately shone brightly. Open black lens bracket edict, follow close black lens bracket. A ray of light shot from the talisman into Chen Ling's body. Chen Ling trembled, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move an inch. What kind of book God path skill was this again? Chen Ling's face was extremely grim. Although he couldn't move his body, he seemed to be able to speak without restriction. And he said coldly, illegally detaining an enforcer of the Aurora domain. This is a crime. Illegally detaining? Who saw it? Upon hearing this, the two enforcers behind him immediately turned around, their gazes fixed on the winter port sky, as if oblivious to everything happening inside the house. Kid, don't be so naive, this world isn't so reasonable. The man glanced at him, then turned and walked out of the house. Open black lens bracket audience expectation +5 close black lens bracket. Chen Ling felt as if his body was being pulled by threads. Following involuntarily, a bone-chilling wind poured into winter port from the frozen sea. Chen Ling, dressed only in a thin layer of clothing, slowly walked into the snow. Chen Ling frowned and scanned his surroundings with his peripheral vision. The enforcers who had originally surrounded the entire winter port so tightly had left at some point. Only a few still busy enforcers who saw this instinctively turned their heads away and walked around. Chen Ling's heart sank, although he had guessed that the Constellation Commerce Association's power was immense. He hadn't expected them to so brazenly violate Aurora City's rules and directly abduct him from Winter Port. The order and rules of the Aurora domain were far more chaotic than he had imagined. Chen Ling followed behind the man like a puppet, his mind racing, trying to find a way to escape his predicament. Unfortunately, he couldn't even move a finger now. He followed the man, walking through the bustling streets of Winter Port, until they reached a simple train platform. 2K15 tickets to Aurora City. Please. The man walked up to the ticket booth and spoke politely. The ticket seller looked at him and Chen Ling behind him. You can buy tickets, but entering the city requires qualifications. Otherwise you'll be forcibly sent back. You should know that, right? I know. Seeing the man nod calmly, the ticket seller said no more, and 2 tickets were handed to the man. He took Chen Ling to the platform to wait for the train. There were other passengers on the platform, but they only glanced at the two of them casually and then paid them no more attention. Chen Ling and the man were both in casual clothes. In their eyes, these were just 2 ordinary passengers, no different from anyone else. Chen Ling looked at the surrounding passengers, and just as he was about to shout something, the man in front of him slowly said, I advise you not to try to call for help. Otherwise, I don't mind killing everyone here. Chen Ling's eyes narrowed. He had indeed thought of calling for help just now. After all, he couldn't move his body now, so he could only rely on speaking to find a way out. Since the enforcement officer and enforcers were unwilling to oppose the man, as long as there were more witnesses, it wouldn't be so easy for the man to take him away. Unfortunately, this man's bottom line was horrifyingly low. Are all the people in Aurora City butchers like you? Chen Ling asked coldly. Of course not, the man replied calmly. However, if you're going to be someone's dog, you naturally have to be prepared to get your hands dirty. Clang, clang, clang. Just as the two were speaking, a steam train roared towards them, accompanied by the ear-splitting sound of deceleration. The steel behemoth slowly came to a halt in front of them. K-15 to Aurora City. All aboard, the conductor's call sounded. The man brushed the dust off his overcoat and walked straight into the carriage. Chen Ling stiffly lifted his feet and followed closely. This train to Aurora City only ran once a day, because very few people rode it. The vast carriage was empty, with no other passengers besides the two of them. The man casually picked a window seat and sat down, taking a fresh newspaper from the metal rack and reading it with his head down. Sit down, the man said without lifting his head. It'll take about 4 hours to get to Aurora City from here. Cherish your last moments. At this moment, Chen Ling felt as if 2 great mountains were pressing on his shoulders, forcing him to sit on the chair opposite the man. I need to use the restroom. Chen Ling thought for a long time, but could only manage this cliched line, overused in countless films and TV shows. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Do you think I can't control your body to go to the restroom? All I have to do is make you walk to the restroom. Unbutton your pants, and then... Never mind, I don't want to. Chen Ling abandoned this clumsy escape plan. The whistle echoed through the sky, and this steel behemoth, sprawled on the tracks, slowly began to move. The low clanging sound came again. Chen Ling's heart was incomparably agitated. It was almost impossible for him to escape from this 4th-tier expert with his own strength. He could only wait until he entered Aurora City and find a way for the Twilight Society to rescue him. But how exactly should he do it? Just as Chen Ling was racking his brains, a thunderous gunshot rang out from outside the carriage. Bang! Immediately after, the driving wheels at the bottom of the train exploded. Chen Ling felt the carriage lurch violently, then tilt to one side. The newspaper rack next to the man immediately toppled over. A hot teacup shattered on the floor. The conductor's startled cry sounded from outside the carriage, and the entire train jolted violently to a screeching halt. The man's expression changed. He gripped the fixed cable to steady himself and turned to look out the window. Dazzling sparks erupted on the white snow, and a figure slowly emerged from within. "Sir." The conductor on the platform rushed over. "What is this?" "Shut up." Bang. The carriage door was kicked open. Cold wind mixed with snowflake fragments swirled into the carriage. A figure in a black trench coat stepped onto the carriage floor. He held a gun in his right hand, its dark barrel still emitting blue smoke. Seeing that familiar face, Chen Ling was first stunned. Then his pupils contracted violently. 3rd District Enforcer Chen Ling. The man stood amidst the shattered glass, speaking unhurriedly, coming out of the Bingdao Ancient Treasury, and not reporting to the 3rd District immediately. "Where are you going?" "Han Meng?" Chen Ling's eyes were filled with shock. He never expected to meet Han Meng here. One should know that this was not Han Meng's jurisdiction, but Winter Port, several hours away from the 3rd District. The man's brow furrowed tightly. He slowly stood up, facing Han Meng from opposite ends of the carriage, confronting each other from a distance. "Where he goes, you probably can't control it anymore." The man tilted his head slightly. "Which district's enforcement officer are you? You dare to snatch someone President Yan wants?" Han Meng didn't speak. He simply calmly raised the gun barrel, which was still emitting blue smoke, and aimed it at the man's forehead. "I'm taking my subordinate back. What's it to you?" Chapter 89. As long as he lives. Killing intent surged wildly in the carriage, and the temperature plummeted. Chen Ling was trapped in his seat, staring blankly at the murderous Han Meng, his mind momentarily blank. Han Meng leaving the 3rd District, suddenly appearing here, and even blowing up the train's driving wheel with a single shot. Was no coincidence. The only explanation was that he came for him. But how did he know the Constellation Commerce Association was going to make a move on him? The man was locked on by Han Meng's gun, a killing intent already enveloping him. He frowned, staring at Han Meng for a long time, as if remembering something. "Han Meng, I think I've heard that name before." A flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes. "I heard that a few years ago, a new enforcer from the 3rd District killed the Constellation Commerce Association president's nephew in the Bingdao Ancient Treasury. After being taken into custody, he endured 3 rounds of soul fragmentation search evidence and even maintained his sanity. This incident even alarmed the higher-ups at headquarters." "That enforcer, was he called Han Meng?" "Is that so?" Han Meng said indifferently. "What a coincidence." His fingertip rested on the trigger, and beneath his black trench coat, a domain rapidly expanded outwards. Feeling the terrifying aura contained within this domain, the man's face grew even uglier. He raised his hand without hesitation, just about to sketch something in the void, when a thick beam of light instantly flashed past his temple. The invisible deconstruction force was like a bullet, directly shaving off his sideburns. And in the blink of an eye, it pierced through all the train carriages, leaving only a huge circular hole. "What makes you think your words are faster than my gun?" Han Meng remained in the same posture, holding the gun with one hand, a faint wisp of smoke drifting from the muzzle, his expression unreadable. But at this moment, a few drops of cold sweat slid down the man's forehead. A hint of lingering fear and terror flashed across his pale face. If Han Meng's shot had been off by just a little more, his head would have been deconstructed into nothingness. He survived not because the other party missed, but because the other party never intended to kill him. This is a warning. Never try to directly attack a judgment. You fool. Han Meng pointed the gun at the man and gestured towards Chen Ling. Release the characters on him. Otherwise, the next shot will be at your head. The man was both shocked and enraged at this moment. As a fellow 4th-tier powerhouse, he could only be firmly suppressed by Han Meng's court of judgment, which made him feel incredibly stifled. He possessed all the skills of the book God Path, but in front of that gun muzzle, everything he did was too slow. But he had no choice. The frontal combat power of most God Paths could hardly ever surpass the Soldier God Path, and the Judgment Path was the most destructive path among all Soldier God Paths. How could he, a book God Path practitioner, fight against a judgment when he was already locked on by the opponent? no matter how fast the words were. Could they be faster than a bullet? The man's expression changed repeatedly. He stared at Han Meng for a long time, then gritted his teeth and spoke. You know the consequences of offending the Constellation Commerce Association? No one knows better than I do. Han Meng's eyes narrowed slightly, and a wisp of killing intent once again spread through the carriage. Don't make me repeat myself a third time. Release him. Seeing that a second bullet was about to be fired, the man gritted his teeth, lightly wiped his palm in the void, and remotely released the characters controlling Chen Ling. Chen Ling immediately felt his body lighten, and control returned to his body. Don't think that just because you've been hiding outside Aurora City, they can't do anything to you. The man slowly retreated, and as he moved, mysterious characters continuously appeared on the train carriage floor. Next time we meet, you won't have the chance to point a gun at me again. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and the next moment, those mysterious characters suddenly lit up. His figure transformed into black before Chen Ling's eyes, like ink being deconstructed into individual strokes, horizontal, vertical, left falling, right falling, hook, rapidly disappearing into nothingness. He could turn his body into characters? Chen Ling witnessed this scene with immense surprise. All the skills of the book God Path seemed to be beyond his comprehension. Seeing the man leave, Han Meng calmly put away his gun and looked at Chen Ling. Not leaving yet? Do you really want to follow him to Aurora City? With that, he turned and walked out of the train. Blowing up the train's driving wheel with one shot shocked the crew and other passengers on the platform. They watched with wide eyes as Han Meng, in his black trench coat, walked out of the station, their expressions as if they were looking at a monster. Chen Ling pushed through the crowd and walked up to him. How did you know I was here? There's only one train entering Aurora City per day, and it departs from Winter Port, so this is the only place. Chen Ling still wanted to ask how he knew the Constellation Commerce Association would secretly take him away, but recalling what the man had just said, he didn't ask the question. According to what he said, Han Meng had already offended the Constellation Commerce Association in the Bingdao Ancient Treasury years ago and had even gone through 3 soul-shattering searches. What Chen Ling had already experienced, and even what he hadn't had time to experience yet, Han Meng had already gone through years ago. No one, not even he, the victim, understood the Constellation Commerce Association's methods better than him. The two walked side by side in the snow. Han Meng didn't ask Chen Ling what happened in the ancient treasury, and Chen Ling didn't ask Han Meng about his past experiences. They both remained silent, like two taciturn companions walking home together. Finally, Han Meng's voice sounded again. I still underestimated you. What? I thought you'd at most kill a few people. I didn't expect you to be the only one to come out. Han Meng's voice betrayed no hint of praise or blame. This incident has caused too much trouble. Chen Ling suddenly remembered the words Han Meng had specifically left for him before he came to the Bingdao Ancient Treasury. If you encounter some things in the Bingdao Ancient Treasury, don't be too hesitant. You are an enforcer of our 3rd district, and even if you cause trouble, I'll cover for you. Chen Ling was not hesitant. Han Meng, indeed, covered for Chen Ling. When Chen Ling walked out of that small room, all the enforcers and enforcement officers chose to close their eyes. Only Han Meng, after rushing hundreds of miles, blew up the train with a single shot, raising his gun against the powerful authority within Aurora City. If not for him, Chen Ling would probably have been forcibly taken to Aurora City, and his fate would have been unknown. Chen Ling was silent for a long time, then spoke 2 words, earnestly and solemnly. Thank you. Han Meng turned to look at him, his black trench coat continuing to move towards the end of the snow. As long as you live, that's enough. Chapter 90. Shura and Judgment. Bingdao Ancient Treasury. A blood-soaked figure stumbled out of the vortex, falling into the frozen sea. The biting cold gnawed at his body. Xianxia endured the pain and the stiffness brought by the cold, struggling to swim over 100 meters before finally climbing onto a 2-meter-long ice floe. Cough, cough, cough. He lay weakly on the ice, his entire body exhausted. A sea breeze blew, and the moisture on his body solidified into shards, taking away his last few wisps of warmth. Xianxia stared blankly at the dark sky and the gradually receding giant sword, his scar face showing only numbness. He had survived. He didn't know how he had survived. The last moment he remembered was Chen Ling standing in front of him, gun in hand. He recalled his heart being pierced. Thinking of this, Xianxia instinctively reached for his chest. His flesh was still intact. No large hole had been opened, and something seemed to be beating inside. He could feel that as his heart beat. Killing intent flowed through his veins, and his whole being felt as if it had been cleansed. Also, something seemed to have been added to his body, resonating continuously with the distant black giant sword. What kind of monster is that guy? Exactly? Xianxia recalled the red-clothed figure who had single-handedly fought his way through the Bingdao ancient treasury. A lingering fear in his heart. Ever since he had counter-killed Yan Shikai and fought his way through, his spirit had accumulated to an extremely sharp point. But he never expected Chen Ling to suddenly appear at the end, crushing his pride into dregs in just a few moves. Most importantly, even now, he didn't know the person's identity. A fire usurpers? An enforcer? Or some other conspiracy organization? Xianxia rested for a moment, then sat up from the ice. His gaze swept across the boundless frozen sea, and a terrifying thought suddenly surged into his mind. How was he going to get back? When they came, they had taken a boat for several hours. Now he had nothing. Was he supposed to paddle an ice floe back? Xianxia's face grew uglier, because he realized that, apart from this option, he really had no other way. He gritted his teeth, prostrated himself on the ice, plunged his hands into the seawater, and, relying on astonishing speed and strength, slowly moved in the direction of Winter Port. Xianxia would never have imagined that the Shura, who was so spirited not long ago, would now be reduced to a human engine. He had to speed up before he starved or froze to death. Ellipsis. On the way back to the 3rd district, Chen Ling told Han Meng everything that had happened in the Bingdao ancient treasury, of course. It was his edited version. Han Meng listened in silence. It was a long time after Chen Ling had finished speaking that he asked the first question in a hoarse voice. How did Zhang Qin die? He was killed by that 8 fire usurpers. Chen Ling paused. I avenged him. Han Meng looked at the overcoat Chen Ling was wearing, which originally belonged to 8, and his eyes revealed an undeniable pain. Chen Ling had never seen such desolation and weariness on his face. Thank you. This time, it was Han Meng who thanked Chen Ling. Chen Ling did not accept it, because he felt he was not worthy of this gratitude. Zhang Qin was already dead, and avenging him changed nothing. If he truly had the ability, he should have saved Zhang Qin as well. As for the other people in the Bingdao ancient treasury, although their deaths were all related to him, even if he hadn't instigated the hatred between the enforcer and the fire usurpers, they would still have fought once the fire usurpers had seized the Dao base fragments and returned to the ancient treasury entrance. Not to mention thief Saint Bai Yi outside. From the very beginning, these enforcer who entered the Bingdao ancient treasury had no chance of leaving alive. Oh, right. Han Meng looked at Chen Ling. This time, did you step onto the soldier god path? Yes. Which path? Shura. A hint of surprise flashed in Han Meng's eyes. He nodded slightly. Shura is good. There are only a few people in the entire Aurora City who have stepped onto this path. Which path are you on? Chen Ling asked, feigning ignorance. Judgment. Is there any difference between it and Shura? Of course, judgment pursues extreme lethality, but at higher ranks, the body becomes relatively fragile, whereas Shura is the king of close combat. Although its lethality is not as strong as judgment, its survival ability is extremely powerful. Especially the first-tier skill, Blood Clothes. You should be able to feel the power it brings you. Unless it's a one-hit kill. The more severe the injury, the stronger the damage. When this effect is amplified to its extreme, the damage is even comparable to judgment. Chen Ling nodded thoughtfully. Now he possessed the 3rd and 4th tier skills of judgment, and the 1st tier skill of Blood Clothes. Combining the two, he wondered if it could be considered complementing each other's strengths. Then, after stepping onto the god path, how does one advance? Chen Ling probed. Are there any prerequisites to complete beforehand? Prerequisites? There's no such thing. Han Meng explained. Although the 14 god paths in the world are all different, their essence is the same. They all rely on spiritual power to ascend. Each ascension, besides granting different skills, also triggers a significant increase in spiritual power. Ultimately, this depends on individual talent. For those whose talent aligns with the god path, their spiritual power grows faster. and their advancement speed is also quicker. If talent is insufficient, advancement becomes very difficult, and they can only stop at a certain tier, confined to that rank for life. Of course, from the 4th tier onwards, advancement becomes increasingly difficult. Sometimes, besides the accumulation of spiritual power, some breakthroughs are also needed. Indeed, other people's advancement didn't require as much trouble as his. Qianling sighed in his heart. Besides the growth of spiritual power, he also needed to complete the performance tasks on the stone steps. If he failed to complete them, even if his spiritual power was high, he wouldn't be able to enter the next tier. This meant that every step he took would be several times more difficult than others. Then, how long does it usually take to advance from the 1st tier to the 2nd tier? For ordinary people, about 2 years. If one has good talent, they might barely advance in just over a year. That long? Qianling was shocked. Then how long did it take you? 6 months. Qianling. No wonder the people in the 3rd district all said Han Meng was a genius of the soldier god path. Compared to him, the difference was too obvious. But Qianling also felt something was off. Because it had only been about a week since he stepped onto the 1st tier of the drama god path, and now his foot was almost touching the 2nd step. Qianling even felt that he should be able to truly step onto the 2nd tier in just a few days. Was he inherently gifted? Or did the reward after completing the performance directly save him a lot of time?